Hi, everyone. We just jumped from recording 40 to 55, okay? I'm definitely in a contemplative energy today. So that's going to reflect in how how I sound. Today's been a wild day. Child. I mean, really, all the time is wild, but I have definitely got to say that I don't know what has been in the air December and February. I mean, January, I feel like it was like starting to calm down a little bit, but it's been on a whole nother level. And I've been experiencing some things. I could barely even talk. I've been experiencing things that I really have to like sit down and be like, whoa, like what actually is reality right now? So I am in an overall very contemplative energy. Okay. And so we're going to talk about a dream that I had quite a while ago. I was pretty sure that I had done this one already, but I know sometimes I go back and I delete some of them and then some of them I don't finish, recording on my phone and stuff. But anyways, we're going to get it done today. Okay. So today is, February 17th. So we've been seeing 217, you've been seeing 55, you've been seeing 40. This might be, significant to you, as well. So in this dream started off very strange. Very, very strange. I was hyper aware. Someone used that term. I was hyper aware of my surroundings, right? But I can't say that I was lucid because lucid means that you are aware that you are dreaming. But I'm not even convinced that most of these experiences I'm having, now that I like really sit and contemplate and like how much a lot of them actually come into fruition, maybe I have not been lucid dreaming because I'm not actually dreaming. I'm not really in like a simulated dream space in that sense. Maybe I'm just astral traveling or something. I don't know. Like I'm trying to figure out these different levels of consciousness. Because over like the last few weeks, well, no, it's not true. It's been longer than that. It's been like a few months. I've been kind of having this idea of apportation in the back of my mind and kind of figuring out how that happens and how that works. And not really realizing that I have been experiencing a form of apportation already, which would be bringing back marks, scars, switching sides on my body. So in some type of way, I am outporting things from that space into the 3D waking reality when I wake up, which is wild.com. But let me get back to the dream. Oh, goodness, child. Okay, so in this dream, I was hyper aware and I was sitting in this van. Okay, now this is an unmarked van, which I found it to be interesting. Actually, no. It did have some type of symbol on it. Like, I don't remember what it was, though. It was not an unmarked van, but it was a white van. And it did have something on it, but like I said, I can't remember right now. I feel like it could have been like some type of like red and blue kind of star symbol or something like that. I can't remember, child. But anyways, I was sitting in this van and I was sitting with a lot of women that I recognize from my family in this lifetime. Okay. So it was about 3 of us. I believe it was 3 of us. And then one woman, who I'm going to, conceal her identity because I think I might have talked about it on my other podcast, but I don't remember. But in this one, I'm going to conceal it. So we're going to call her Bev. I don't know. I want to call her Bev. Okay. Like Beverly. And Beverly is, a famous actress. Okay. But she definitely fit in with this specific group of women from my family. And what I mean by that is that they all have a very Southern feel to them. And the type of Southern I'm talking about is where we don't really talk about really pressing things, really emotional things. And Southerners have a very interesting way of making something that actually should be a big deal. They find some type of humor in it, or they find a way to have really catchy phrases like pimps, let's say. These really catchy phrases that don't really say much, but it says enough for you to kind of just skip over that and just go to the next thing, even though what it's talking about is something that really should be talked about. Okay, so it's like that Southern Baptist. I'm not gonna pick on the Baptist too much, but Southern Baptist type of feel, like kind of like that kind of feel, if you know what I mean. And, don't like to talk about dirty things or nasty things, or, you can't say the word lie. You want to say story and fable, that kind. And then there's some energies that are a little bit more rebellious, but still pretty reserved. It's definitely a Southern belle kind of energy. And so we were all sitting in the car, and the immediate thing that I noticed is that we were all wearing, I want to say Southern belle clothes, but almost like Victorian kind of era stuff, like the big poofy skirts. We were all wearing, these pink, reds, whites kind of dresses, where your bust is propped up, and, kind of like a sweetheart princess kind of dress. And then I noticed that the van was very modern day. And then when I looked outside, I saw this huge mansion. And this huge mansion had this huge wall of all these really big, beautiful, aged oak trees. And then there was this very Spanish looking, circular tower that looked very out of place, but it was there on the property as well. And that looked like it was in a different time period. So that's what I noticed, is that all these different time periods were clashing. It wasn't all one time period, which I thought was so strange. And at this point, like I said, still, I did not say oh, this must be a dream. I was just reality is strange. I guess this is a thing now. I don't know. I feel to a certain extent, it is so difficult to surprise me in the astrals enough to where I'm just oh, this must be a dream, because there's just so much crazy stuff going on in general. It's so crazy. And so anyways, so as I'm sitting there and, I'm orienting myself, what's going on? I'm trying to think why am I here, and why are we all sitting in this van? Because the door to the van was kind of open, and we were all just, it seemed we were all waiting on something. So I was kind of trying to orient myself, what's going on? So as I was doing that, I noticed that there was another female presence that was not in a body, and she was on the left side of me. So I was in the van all the way to the left by the window, okay? And so that was the part of the van that didn't open up. So we all had to get out of the right side of the van. And then I pretty much just decided to sit over there because all of these women in my family are older than me. And so I wanted to make sure that if they had to use the bathroom or something like that, that they, could get out, and, what I'm saying, just making sure that I'm being considerate, right? And so she was kind of hovering by me somewhere between the edge of the van and outside of the van, but I could clearly feel her presence there, as if she was just sitting next to me. It was very interesting. And so as I was sensing her there, I started to become aware of myself that in some type of way we were playing out a past life. And I was seeing them for who they were in this life, but that's not actually how they looked in this past life. Now, however, for myself, and it's kind of hard to explain. So it's how would I explain this? The feeling, stick with me here, okay? The feeling is that they had shifted so much away from their past life version, this past life version, that they no longer looked like themselves. I don't know how to explain it other than that. So it's almost like, if I could think about it like in a quantum way, like try to explain it like a quantum way, it's like when you are the same, like let's say you're part of a specific, very, very strict, like orthodox religion, right? Then it's going to be very easy for you, if you are reincarnating into the same families, right? The same traditions, to sort of, in a way, stay in a certain range of what you look like to a certain extent. Right, because when people are consistent in their habits, they tend to choose things that are like, that are same, including people with similar viewpoints that are also the same as them, right? And then it's usually when someone is looking for something different that maybe you start to have people going outside of their traditional religious belief systems. And trying, to interact with people who are outside of that, though it is like forbidden by the family, or it's not, they're not super happy about it. Do you get what I'm saying? And so eventually that could lead to you coming together with someone and mixing, let's say, DNA with someone that's very different than what your, let's say, more original family was. And so if it's like 100 years down the line and you've kind of started this kind of snowball effect of going after change, you could look very, very different when you want to reincarnate again into the family. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope that that's making sense. So in this space, though, it was like they had gone away from like their belief systems, and so it had drastically changed them. Now, I'm not saying whether it was good or bad, but I just noticed that me in this lifetime, I was pretty similar, like as far as my temperament was similar. So I had a very expounded viewpoint on things, very open to things. But within myself, my core personality was pretty much the same. And so though I was also experiencing myself with them in this past life, I still was very similar to myself. So this was a past life that was very close to the life that I was living with them in this kind of in-between state. And then also just as a consciousness in general. And like, if you are this kind of person too, because like even when you think of yourself outside of the body, you still think like, oh, I'm probably still DeeDee outside the body, or, I'm still myself outside the body. It's not as much, I would say, like, mystery about who you are, like maybe the different bodies that you've taken on and what you've done during those lifetimes, but your core of who you are, you have an idea of who you've been, even though you've had to grow and change. And of course, sometimes where we start is not where we finish, but in general, you have a certain feel of what your, let's say, archetypal energies are, right? Okay, so as we were just sitting in there, they started talking about certain things, and as they were talking, I got the feeling that we were waiting for some type of event at this tower, okay? So again, this tower was behind this big, huge brick mansion wall with all these oak trees. So we were going to have to like get access to it, and I wasn't entirely sure how we even knew where this place was or how we were even connected to this place, which I thought was very interesting. And it was a very, very specific yellow kind of cabana style, sort of kind of Irish circular tower. And I knew that it was specifically a moon tower. So it had something to do with the moon. So I knew we were waiting for some type of celestial moon event, and that's why we're sitting in this van. Now, all of a sudden, I realized that there was someone in the car that was missing, and I was like, wait, someone is missing. And as I was thinking that, the person walked up. It's another person that I recognize from this lifetime. And so when this family member walked up, I immediately recognized him because he also looks like himself in this reality. And so it's very interesting because he was wearing like a court jester kind of outfit, like those Mardi Gras jesters, which is based on the Joker archetype. And I thought that was very interesting because that is not really the archetype that he portrays to people. And so I was like, that's very interesting that this kind of space is saying that he's been himself and that he is the jester archetype. I thought that was very interesting. So it's not even based on just like my perception or the family's perception. It's based on like a universal perception, I guess. Very interesting. So as I was looking at him, he was walking up to the car and he was not jovial. He wasn't jovial at all. And I was like, what an odd thing for a jester to be sad. And he wasn't necessarily sad, but I could tell that he was in really deep contemplation about something. Like he was very contemplative about something. And as I was staring at him, I was kind of pulling information on what he was pondering on. So I couldn't see it clearly, but I knew that there was like something with this moon event. And he was deciding whether he was going to do the right thing or not. And as he was pondering it, I was saying, like in my head, not out loud, but in my head, I was like, he's probably not going to do the right thing. And the spirit who was next to me, this female spirit, was like, we're going to give him a chance. Let's see. And I was like, he's not. You can see, you can look at how many times he's like scrunching his eyebrows, how many times his eyes are shifting as far as when people are, in their head, but, physically expressing, they're looking at one aspect versus the other aspect. So they shift their eyes. I was like, he's not going to do it. And she was like, let's just give it an opportunity. I was like, okay, I'll give him an opportunity. Let's see if he does it. And so the next thing I know, it was probably like a good 10 minutes. And I realized that he had gone to the bathroom somewhere, which I didn't even know that he knew the area, which was also very interesting. So about 10 minutes goes by, and like I would say the matriarch of the family, I would say, was this actress. Okay, so matriarch in the sense that she was like the elder, even though everyone in the family was respected. So this wasn't necessarily our queen. I don't know if we had a queen. Maybe she would have been in the position of a queen, possibly, but I just don't feel like the family really worked like that. But she was in the position of elder. And so, after we all kind of came together with our ideas and things like that, she was the one that was seen as the most wisdom. And then I would have been like the kind of youngest woman in this group. So I would have been kind of in like a more maiden kind of energy. Still learning the ways and different things like that of interacting with people, because it definitely felt like we were some type of royal family or something like that. So I had been taught in the ways of a lady, and then I was like coming up in the ways of how to interact with the people. That's what I would probably say. And so she starts to look at him, and she starts to realize as well that he's not gesturing. Like he's not really like making jokes. He's not really laughing. He's not really, being entertaining. He's kind of in this kind of weird space where we don't know exactly what he's planning. Like he looks like he's literally in between like being a good person and like stealing everything from us. That's exactly what the energy was like. It was very, very contrasting and very chaotic. And it was kind of underneath this deeply contemplative energy. So it was also very quiet. So you could miss it almost. And so she asked him, and she was like, Jester, what is wrong with you? Not in that way. It was in a very, caring and calm type of way. But essentially, what's wrong with you? And so he said nothing. And when he said nothing, I knew that he wasn't going to do the right thing. Like, I immediately knew it. When he said nothing, I knew that he wasn't going to do the right thing. And he said nothing, and then he tried to, like, kind of start being a jester again. And I was like, yeah, I know. And so the interesting thing is that it was about probably another 10 minutes after that where we literally started to see, and this was crazy, because this moon was huge, and it was yellow, and it was ginormous. And it literally was coming like from one side of this huge mansion. This mansion took up like a whole block of the street. It was literally coming from like the... looking at it from my perspective, it was coming from the west side of the mansion, and it was literally doing like a circle to where we knew like we had a few minutes to get up this tower, this moon tower, because it was going to be at a perfect angle directly over the top of the tower, and that the moon in some type of way was going to be a portal back to our past life. Okay, so let me pause here. Okay? So the moon was going to be acting as a portal. And at that moment when I saw the moon, all of this energy started rushing to me and memories started rushing to me that we were actually stuck in some type of in-between place. So it was like we were stuck in an in-between realm. Now, I don't know how we got to this in-between realm or anything like that, but I knew that we were stuck there. And that's how I was seeing all these different time period elements to the reality that wasn't cohesive because we were in like an in-between realm. So I knew that we had this celestial alignment that was going to help us get back to our time period. So we had to like literally climb up the stairs and then jump through the moon as a portal. It was crazy. It was wild. I know, it was absolutely nuts. And so what I did know, because when I saw the moon, I understood what he was in contemplation about. Oh, that's interesting, because this is red, green, and white. Interesting. I understood what he was in contemplation about. So what he was in contemplation about was the simple fact that since we were in the in-between realm, there was something about quantumly that our past life was, I don't know how to describe it, up for grabs in a sense. So this is like difficult to put into English words, but so we were in the in-between realm, and if we all went back at the same time, then everyone would remember us. It would be like we went back in time and nothing ever changed. Okay, so the timeline would automatically sync up to us. Everybody would remember us. We would remember this experience, but in the lifetime that we were going back to, everyone would remember us, and it was like we never left. And it would just be a crazy experience that we all got to experience together. Now, the tricky thing is that everybody was okay with their positions except for the jester. The jester wanted to be the king. Okay? And so what we all knew also as well is that if he went back by himself and he switched the timeline, let's say that he murdered the king or whatever, and, you know, we were all missing, right? Because we were in an in-between phase somewhere out in the multiverse somewhere. Then he could, like, stage someone killing the king. And then since we weren't actually there anymore and the king had died, which creates a new timeline, people's memories of us over time would start to fade because it would literally create a new timeline. And so virtually he could go back and be the king. Now he wouldn't be able to do that if all of us went back. But if he went by himself, he could create a new timeline. And then even if we were to get into this portal and go back, since the king was dead now and he had been the king for so long, it would cause a Mandela effect where certain people would remember us, people that we were very close to, if we had gotten that close, which I feel like we did. certain people that we had really, really good connections with, like local bakers or, people that we got clothing from, people who were really nice to that, cook food for us, people that we had day to day or, consistent personal relationships with, they would remember us. People who we didn't really know, we didn't really make any efforts to connect to, people that, maybe just weren't aware of us, kids who weren't really like, a certain age at the time we were there, would not remember us. And so we would also have to contend with the fact that he also created a new timeline, which would be also valid. Even though it's not correct, it would be valid. Okay. And so that's what he was going back and forth about, whether he wanted to just run up to the moon portal and jump in it and leave us behind. Because I guess he did something. He must have done something, because nobody really remembered it until we saw the moon. Nobody in the car really even knew what we were even waiting for until we actually saw the moon. And so he had I'm like thinking like a competitive advantage, that he knew exactly what was going on. And so anyways, as the moon was moving, the moon moves relatively fast. We had to make a quick decision. He had to make a quick decision. And his decision was that he wasn't going to say anything. So he literally just started sprinting towards the thing. And everybody was just stunned at first, right? Which means that you lose time. And so then everyone finally started running after, because they understood what he was trying to do. And so I was like getting out of the car, and I was running, and I was giving all my might, and I was like running up the stairs of this moon thing, and everybody had gotten in. And then the spirit I was telling you about, she was like, you can go back to the van. And I was like, what do you mean I can go back to the van? I'm like, I need to go because I'm going to get left behind. And what about the timeline? And she was like, I'll explain it to you in the van. Just trust me, go back to the van. And so I went back to the van, which I was a little relieved, because I wasn't really trying to book it all the way up that tower and stuff like that, and then have to fight him. And, he's a liar. You know what I'm saying? I just wasn't. I'm just like, child, I'm not in the mood for that. And so as I was sitting back in the van, she was like, you were never really supposed to use the moon tower, because you have, let's say, like a natural form of getting back there. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was like, you can use the body. She was like, you have done enough work, spiritually speaking, for your ancestors, that as a descendant, you have unlocked the ability to use their bodies. So you can travel through bodies. You don't need the moon tower to get back there. And that also helped to lock in the sequence for everyone else as well. So even if he did actually do the moon tower, and he did, leave everybody behind, the one loophole that the universe has is that if there's someone in the family that's been really trying to work on ancestral karma, generational curses, and things like that, then that person does get access to their ancestors' genetics. And so they can move through time through their ancestral bodies. And so that's really wild to explain. I'll probably explain it in another video. But because I was able to move organically through the bodies, I was able to, let's say, like solidify and lock in those memories throughout all of my ancestors who had lived throughout these time periods between this in-between state and the reality that we were going to, right? Which inevitably the reality we were going back to was a reality where I was pretty much myself. So even though I was moving through ancestors, through time, through lineage, ultimately the past life I could be going back to was one that was very similar to the energy in the body that I have now. So ultimately we'd be going back to myself, just in a different form. And so that was able to lock in the memories. And that's when I realized that this whole kind of scenario that was going on about how we got to the in-between realm, us not really remembering how we got there, was really all for this jester to see if he was going to make the right decision or not. It was actually not even about the moon tower at all. It wasn't about the moon tower at all. It was all about this one particular family member and seeing if he was going to do the right thing or not, which he did not do. But she really wanted to give him a chance. She was really like, look, we're just going to see. I'm like, okay, girl. And that energy also felt kind of like an aunt to me. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk about that because I thought it was interesting. Because, a lot of the time in regression sessions, and I hear other people have this experience as well, that, sometimes I have had people go back to the bodies of their ancestors. And that is actually, the information and the lifetime that's showing up is actually an ancestor's lifetime. And sometimes I do believe that our past lives are actually the bodies of ancestors that we are very, very close to, not just in genetics, but in personality and temperament. So I wanted to just share that. I thought it would be something really interesting to share, something to ponder on. Also to think about, a more natural type of time travel as well. That, machines and things like that are very nice and very convenient, and sometimes there's definitely look at that black cat, child. This black cat just ran right in front of my car. Oh, you're going that way. Oh, okay. This black cat just ran right in front of my car, and I'm glad that I stopped because I wouldn't have even seen it. But anyways, that, technology is nice, and there's always reasons as to, why we would want like a more machine approach, less emotions, but to not forget that there's always organic means of doing things, and then there's always positive loopholes. And so just trying to stay in your integrity and move as integral as you can also has its perks and its benefits as well. So I just wanted to share that really quickly. That was on my mind today with everything going on, because December and February, they've been on some whole other stuff. I don't know what is in there, child. But I thought that would be fun to share. So that's what I have for you guys. Make sure that you do like, comment, subscribe, share the video with a friend, have you on the commenting, especially if you've had some similar experiences. I would love to hear about them. Dreams like one of my favorite things in the world to talk about. Astral travel experiences, extraterrestrial stuff, all of that. Absolutely love talking about it. And at some point, I'm also going to be talking about my QHHT sessions. I recently just had my 4th or 5th one. And that one, child, that one was interesting. I mean, all of them were interesting, but this one, I'll give a little brief tidbit on why it was so interesting. This QHHT session was the first time that I heard, and some people are not going to like it. I didn't really like it at first either. But it was the first time where they admitted that sometimes, like, the circumstances that are negatively going on in your life are not in your control. And, I already kind of, figured that, because I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. But it was the first time where they were like, yeah, there's someone that's actively, keeping something away from you and doesn't want you to have something. And in a certain type of way, you're going to have to work with that energy in order to get it back. So it's not that I just absorb all of this energy and I just power up and go Super Saiyan and break all the chains. It's that it's going to take some working together to unlock this level of life, which I thought was quite interesting. Now, of course, like I just said, there are always loopholes. But what they suggested, because I don't want you to think that you're to a certain extent, sometimes your life is in other people's hands, but there's always loopholes. But what they suggest is so that this problem actually gets nipped in the butt, and then I don't have to come back and, work with this in another lifetime, is to go ahead and do it the way that they're saying, which is working together. So I thought that was interesting, and I will be back with that at some point in time. Not exactly sure when, so I want to do, get back to like the actual podcast setup where, I was doing like the tarot cards, then the dream, QHHT, and then the actual breakdown and everything. Oh, thank you. Doing the actual breakdown and everything like that. And then doing like the analysis, and then the connections and all that stuff. I want to get back to that format. So yes, my friends, that's what I have for you guys today. Bye.